Hey everyone, welcome back to another interview series episode. As usual, your host Jacob from Vue Storefront and Aditya Patel, me from Hotwise Commerce. Today we have a special guest with us, Sam from Storyblok. He's head of developer relations over there. And we're going to be talking today about the role of CMS and e-commerce and what maybe how headless has really changed what CMSs can offer for retailers and their e-commerce stores. So a lot of things to learn from Sam today and just what his views are in general about what retailers can be looking forward to and how they can be changing how they tell their brand story on their e-commerce. So, hey, Sam, how's your day been going and what are you up to?
Hi everybody, thank you for invitation. And day is busy, but it's so far it's going very well. So thank you very much.
Great.
One more time. And what was the
Awesome.
first
So-
question? Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Basically, I gave a quick introduction that you're head of developer relations, but it would be great if you could just maybe go into a little bit more detail about what you're doing at Storyblok and in general what Storyblok's about and what people should be looking forward to about for it.
Cool. Yep, it's a good question. What I'm doing in Storyblok. So it's a lot of things, and also changing every day because we are like growing as really fast growing. So at the last 2 years, we just went from to almost, I think like we are over 70 people as we are speaking right now. So it's like quite huge company already and steps we are doing. And I was taking care of the developer relations part. So means the everything what's taking and touching the community to tutorials, to do a lot of clients call, demo calls, partner calls, and now of course building DX team or developer relations team. So it's connecting a lot of stuff. And we are doing at Storyblok is we are the headless CMS or platform or whatever we would like to call it. And we are trying to like change the way we are thinking about the system, so about the web and how we are building the web. So we just think about the gem stack and how to build not only web, of course, also applications. So whatever you need to use a content, and the content and storytelling is basically the main part of the whole process that we are focusing on.
Awesome. That's a great overview. So I just want to really, I think the essence of a great content management system for any e-commerce is, like you mentioned, the story that it allows any brand to tell on their e-commerce, because especially since the pandemic, the e-commerce storefront has become the main face of a lot of retailers. So in general, like do you have like any thoughts, or maybe can you go a little bit deeper into like what has really changed since headless has become more prevalent and how that's really changed what stories brands are able to communicate to customers online?
Yep. I mean, there's like, there's not easy answer to that question.
It's not an easy question, yes.
Yeah, there's a little bit story behind, and I think that's a process that is going on for some time. So it's not exactly started by the headless CMSs or like by the Storyblok. I think the Storyblok is one of the next steps, as also the Vue Storefront is one of the steps here on this path. I think it's all started basically by the way that we changed the web design, and basically everything was changing. And there was like time, if you remember, that everybody was thinking that web is dying and there will be no more web soon, and everything will be apps and who knows what else. But then we find out that there's like so many end devices that we don't have any power to like support all of them. And then suddenly the web came back with the solution for everybody. So now suddenly we are building sometimes great e-shops for even the iPhone and Android devices instead of creating as standalone apps. And there was a huge challenges on the way, because somehow we built in the old days the big monolithic CMSs. But these monolithic CMSs wasn't really always the content management system. They were building other parts of the system. So there was like really telling you how you should build your website, how you should build your e-commerce site, and all that application stuff, which basically was the restrictions that came to us at first as a good idea. And it was definitely in like, if I go to this beginning of the monolithic, I totally can understand that. And it was a step the right direction. But then later came also the JavaScript evolved, and we get more power. We wanted to get more freedom again, and suddenly those same systems that were giving us so much power to build something quickly were restricting us to building and using the tools that we would like to. So that was when the James Day came, the idea introduced by the Netlify, and even the Smashing magazine was rebuilt on the Jamstack. And it's just like a really huge website, which is super powerful. And then a lot of people understand that the future is probably not in those bundles of everything in one place, but more decoupled. And not, I don't mean like decoupled in the way of just decoupling the front end and the back end, but decoupling of the services. So you really have to focus on some service, and you can then choose and pick the services for your final product that you would like to use. And this is exactly what happened, because we then have, of course, the React coming, the Gatsby, Next.js, of course, then Vue came with the Nuxt, which starting to also compete a little bit against each other, and that brings, they were like innovating a lot, and then suddenly the Next is so fast that you want to use Next, but your content is living in the old system, and you have issue to connect them together, and it was sometimes so huge problem that I remember times I was working in the agency that we spent on something that you should build in 2 weeks. You spent like few months because you had to find a way how to get that content, which was very opinionated. So it was basically the structure of it and also the model of that content in that systems were built for the web and some kind of generation and how you will generate and produce the website on the server, of course. And then suddenly you have a framework which supports not only server-side rendering, but also a single-page application, all the stuff. And then you shouldn't be driven by the end result. You should be driven by the content model, because that's only one thing is the final web app, but then also the same content you want to use maybe for your application. And then when came the idea out of headless solutions, and basically some call them API CMSs, or we had also this GitHub-based Git-based CMSs, and they evolved into the proper content management systems when we first time, I think, have also the content management systems, because these systems are really focusing on the content management. And if somebody is asking us how you should like render your website or how you should do that, we are saying like, hey, this is your decision, and we really don't want to give you the opinion of it, because for you it could be PHP, for somebody else it could be React, for somebody else it could be still it could be even like pure JavaScript with HTML. And this is what changed, and that's why my answer is so complicated. And then you suddenly see popping up those other services. So I would mention like Vue Storefront, Next, all the front-end frameworks. So even Tailwind CSS is part of that whole movement, in my opinion. Then, of course, the Shopify. So suddenly the Shopify is not, or in general, e-commerce solutions like Shopify, e-commerce, Shopware, they are not offering the final solution to build your website or your eShop. They are offering the system or platform where you manage your content or product, in this case. Right. And then through API, you are getting those data. And that's at the end of the day, I think, where we are heading, that we will be on a level of agencies or freelancers. We will be able to put together what we would like to build. And Storyblok, to answer your question, we decided, or we find out that the content management needs to be better. And we are fully focusing on the storytelling. So how to build stories with your platforms. So whether it's that Vue.js or React or other languages, you can build your model in the Storyblok. It's really matching the components of the Vue or Next or Vue Storefront, and then it's very easily. And we find out a way to make it visual editable. So we have a bridge or like a little library, and then you can see the real-time editing without going to preview or some special deployment way. You just really see, and then all of your like content editors have the feeling that they are kind of building this in real time. It's kind of a visual builder, if I know what I mean. If you saw it, then you will understand, and that's what really people like, that they can go inside and start to using it, and it's very, very user-friendly, and they are very happy about that.
Well, you definitely touched on quite a bit of different planes right there, and we're going to get to each one of those in detail in a little bit. But real quick, you just mentioned connecting directly into frameworks and kind of the visual builders, which actually I was thinking about while you were talking too, which is a few months ago, I think Philip gave a talk on a Storyblok conference about building storefront UI or in general UI frameworks for CMS platforms. And so that was an interesting talk, and it just really kind of brought to mind like how API-based CMSs have enabled you to use different and your own UI frameworks with different content management systems instead of being locked into the components in a CMS. So in general, like I'd love to get like what maybe you've seen some really interesting stuff that retailers or developers or sincere developer relations, maybe like what different agencies have maybe told you about what they've been able to do differently because of this kind of decoupling between what comes out as a final finished product and what happens in the background in the CMS. Does that kind of go in any direction?
No, you're on the right direction. So basically what Storyblok offers, and also like the final solution, is that we offer you, and a lot of people also coming from the old times especially are at first a little bit confused because we don't offer you the final solution. So the best question I always have is like, so how do you support search engine optimization? And this is like a fundamentally wrong question for the headless solution, because you are building the search engine optimization in your front-end framework in the next. You just need to get the correct data from the headless solution, and you build there anyway anything you want basically. And this answer is kind of scaring us people because it means a lot of responsibility, and this brings me to the point that basically the agencies, also a big corporation or big enterprise clients who are using Storyblok, are able to build exactly what they want with Storyblok. So they are not really restricted in any way. So they can go to build something that their content editors, creators, marketers can build everything from small parts like buttons to have a technical names, theoretically add all the styling into the system, have tons of checkboxes and options if how to build the stuff. But also if you want to, if you know that your let's say your final users who will be creating the content doesn't have so much technical background,
know-how,
then or know-how, they can also build something much more abstract for them and just say like, hey, here's a website, here is you have 5 sections that you can use on this website, and there is a title, this, just fill it in, and you can hide those fields from them and use just a front-end framework to style it.
Which is something a little bit more traditional to what like a Shopify basic user might be used to, is just looking at a simple platform, right? Interesting. And just to move on from that to something else you kind of touched on in the earlier part of your description in the history of CMSs, real quick, when Jamstack came into play. So to me, and I imagine maybe not so much into like the developer community, but in general, like Jamstack. So like I've been introduced to it at a very high level. The most I know about it is pretty much that it pre-renders all of your pages. So it's all server-side rendered, and there's no dynamic rendering of pages. That might be completely wrong, but I'm interested to hear about a little bit more about what Jamstack is and how that, like, what role that plays in modern CMS.
I mean, in general, the answer for that is like it was probably a little bit wrong, but he said because it's everything what is it's JavaScript API and markup is Jamstack, and so basically theoretically also single page applications should be Jamstack valid apps or websites or products because they are using JavaScript API and the markup. So there is not really a restriction what is Jamstack. But if we get to the Jamstack and why we also see the Jamstack is that I think the Jamstack was exactly the answer to the complexity we got. We got to the point that to build the websites were so complex that we wanted to back to the roots, and the roots are basically Jamstack, because you have a markdown, and we almost forget to do a proper markup. The accessibility. If you do the basic good markup, it's already quite first step for best accessibility out there. But if you use whatever system for that, who should take that part for and take care of that instead of you probably don't know what you are building and how you are building, and that's why your final product is not good. And that's the Jamstack make it's so easy in basics that anybody can start it. It's very easy to understand, and in my opinion, it's a natural step in evolution of the web, basically.
Well, I'm glad I asked that question because I had completely misunderstood what the hell that was. So I'm glad I did ask, and now I know a lot more. Sorry, Jacob, go ahead.
So one question from my side, Samuel. So regarding the Jamstack, is there any difference between using a headless CMS for example, a server-side application or SPA, like single-page application, or the Jamstack? Is there some kind of difference between the approach, or the approach is completely the same?
The approach in our case is more or less all the time same. I mean, there are some techniques you can use, like of course, if you go for single page application, you can use in the case of the Vuex or some kind of store where you will load your data first, and in the case of the server side rendering or static side generation doesn't have to do that at all. But if you, for example, use that abstraction level of Next or Vue Storefront even, then you even don't know that anymore, because you just set up how do you want to produce that, and you just connect using the module to the Storyblok, set up the one token to get the data, and then you just said like how you want to render your website or a product or application.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and in terms of more dynamic data, because the easiest example of using content management systems is just to provide data like from input in the content management system. And you've been talking about, I think for a second, about the plugins. So the way how, for example, you can fetch the data from, I don't know, e-commerce platform or your backend directly to the CMS. So if you could you please also dive a bit into this topic as well? How does it work?
Yes.
And
yes, that's a good sample. The e-commerce is a very good sample. And as we are here, I will share my screen even. So if it's okay for you, because I have here the nice introduction into the e-commerces, which is basically the introduction to the Storyblok and how this works. And I like this graph. So basically how it's happening in the case of this is also like decoupling. And in the Jamstack, you can connect, of course, your headless CMS, in this case, Storyblok, with your e-commerce backend. And you can then preview your data directly in the headless CMS, because you can create as many as plugins for it. So you can set up and connect your data from for storytelling with your e-commerce data, so your product. And then here, as you are going to generate and do the API layer, the Vue Storefront, in this case, for example, will take care of that it will be pulling the latest data from the e-commerce backend and the latest storytelling data from the headless CMS. But you are basically building your story and the whole thing here in the headless CMS connecting to e-commerce. But the latest data is always here, and that's where then you can get and consume it in the API layer, and then you will produce for the final like devices, whatever is that. And this is very high overview. So just like you see, if you can read a little bit more on that about this URL, and that would definitely help you.
So maybe if you could also right now dive a bit into some links that we'll also mention at the end of the video. So maybe about the integrations or the developer stuff. Up to you. Which one?
Thank you. So to mention some stuff, so definitely, as we are here on the Vue Storefront podcast, or I hope so, it will be named somehow like that, because we still don't have a name. Start. If you want to understand Storyblok, just go for storyblok.com. That you can go for it. Go for developers website to see why you should use it as a developer. So there is like a very nice explanation why we are component-based approach, and you can like create a never-ending chain and added components which are added inside other components. So you can nest as much as you need. The real-time visual editor, of course, and here's like even a little quote from the Vue Storefront and other stuff. So let's just like check this. But then I wanted to definitely mention the Next.js Technology Hub. So we have technologies, multiple, we are supporting a lot of modules, a lot of different technologies. And here on the tc/Next.js, you can find everything you need to know and start with the Next.js. And in this case, of course, with Vue Storefront. So here are like the getting started, which is even without needing to code. This is just running on the code sandbox, and you just need to create your own space, and you can try the Storyblok. You can create a multi-language website, which is straightforward and easy. Our Next module, and we have also 5-minute tutorial somewhere. So just connect is here. Add a headless CMS to Next in 5 minutes. And then if you go to videos, there is like explanation how to build it with like Commerce Flow and the Vue Storefront. This is the talk from the I think Vue.js Amsterdam, if I'm correct, and also like how Debbie is trying next with Storyblok, etc. So really like check all the resources here, or even this 7 parts tutorial how the Vue DOS is built on top of the Storyblok. So if you know the Vue DOS as a tip, Vue DOS tips, just go for it, and you can find out how to build exactly something like that on the top of the Storyblok. Then, as I already mentioned, the e-commerce integration, because the e-commerce and headless e-commerce is the next huge thing in the upcoming years. It's not only about the headless CMSs. The e-commerce will be very, very important skill to know, and a lot of clients are moving to headless e-commerce. I can confirm this. And then, of course, the interaction to the extensions, which is something I wanted to definitely mention. And that is the huge misunderstanding about the headless CMSs out there, and Storyblok also. The headless CMSs are software as a service, and they are like cloud-based. It doesn't mean that you cannot extend them. You can extend them as you need. We want to, and we are working on that to bring even an app store into the Storyblok. So you will be able, hopefully, offer your own plugins into the app store and get also monetize it a little bit. And you can create like already now 3 different types of plugins into Storyblok. So it's custom applications, which can be like a custom app that is running the Storyblok authorization with authorization API of the Storyblok, and you can like show the like deployments in Vercel or Netlify or Google Analytics data or whatever without leaving Storyblok at all. Then, of course, you can create like some kind of field type plugins or like general plugins. So basically custom field types that if our field type is not enough. And this is useful if you want to connect it to your e-commerce service. So if you're using some e-commerce provider that we are not supporting for you, you can very easily build your own plugin and just listen to the API and just fetch the data to Storyblok, save it to Storyblok or whatever you'd like to want to do with that. And the last thing is the tool plugins, which is something between, and it's more or less on the level of the stories that you are building a Storyblok, so you can create like export the whole stories. And all of this extensions, it's able to do, and with the CLI and the management API, all you do in the Storyblok, basically clicking and all that stuff, you can do also programmatically. And some of our like best and biggest agencies, our partners, are even building their own CLIs. And then if they are like creating a new project, they just basically type in the terminal like, hey, I would like to create a new e-commerce. I would like to create it with Vue Storefront. And I would like to use these components from the Vue Storefront. And then it's not only creating the next project for them somewhere, but it's already importing into Storyblok the definitions of those components. So let's say you have a slider and you have all the options from the Vue Storefront in your design library, where you have like all the parameters, what kind of fields you have, props, etc. And all of that you already can import also directly to Storyblok, and then in Storyblok your customers or your clients can use those components in matter of like, let's say, seconds or minutes. It depends how you want to set it up.
Holy smokes. I guess the video title that showed up for a little bit, Fast and Furious, was very apt.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yes, that's me, sorry.
Okay, so I think we can now summarize it in a bit. Mm-hmm. So maybe Aditya, if you'd like to summarize what we have just learned from Samuel, that would be perfect.
I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do a very good job of summarizing, but I can definitely say that Sam has shared a really good understanding of what the new or what the changing landscape of headless e-commerce is and how CMS has changed with that, and specifically also how Storyblok has enabled or offers retailers and just developers in general to change the way they really think about what headless CMS can be and how it's not all just like hardships and integration. There's a lot of plug and play in there, especially with the last few documents we took a look at with the extensions and like the potential for a whole app store there, which changes how you really think about what it means to go into a headless platform, where before it may have meant like a huge amount of manual labor and building stuff from scratch. It's not really true anymore. And a lot of that has really changed. So we're definitely going to link a lot of these links that we took a look at today in the description, along with any other helpful documents that make sense. Samuel, before we close out, any last thoughts and anything you want to just plug real quick?
Honestly, I probably said so much that I shouldn't say anything more. That's
Go
very bad,
headless.
but yeah, go headless. Yeah, believe don't have a fear. It's kind of may look simple or like step back. It's not a step back at all. Don't be afraid that there is no plugins for several search engine optimizations or stuff like that. This is not an issue. This is really not something that is missing. This is your opportunity to make it better because you know the best what you want to do out there and what you need, not some plugin. And the plugins are, how to put it nicely and diplomatically, the plugins are a nice way to create something very fast, but it's also the fastest way to into the hell.
I think it's important to know that, not to think about it as it's not a ready solution. Instead, it's an opportunity for you to make the right solution for the person you're delivering this product to. It lets you really make exactly what you need to deliver in the easiest way, whereas before there was a lot of deconstruction involved and being stuck in what is already given to you in a framework.
Yeah, you said it much better than me.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us in this episode of the interview series with Vue Storefront, and hope to see you around soon online. Oh, actually, speaking of online, any socials that you want to just throw in here?
Oh, yeah, true. Storyblok. So there's like twitter.com/storyblok apparently, and twitter.com/Samuel Snopko. So exactly as you see here on the screen, my name, just together without the space, and that's me. You will find me on the Twitter, and my DMs are open, so feel free to ask any question if you have questions.
Awesome. And thank you so much. Have a great day, and see you guys later.
Ciao.